Hello, everyone from around the world. Welcome once again to Sandro's Success live stream. Today, it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce somebody that I hold in the highest of regard. He is the world's leading authority on brilliance. So I shall say no more than that. Simon T. Bailey is world renowned. Everybody knows his face. Everyone's heard him speak. But I never get enough of this guy. So I'm going to say no more than that because we're going to explore what makes him so brilliant and how he helps other people to become so brilliant. But one thing I do want you all to know is this is one of the most amazing human beings on the planet. A real giver, lovely guy, loads to share. So all I would say is fasten your seatbelts because the next 30 minutes will go by in the blink of an eye. Simon, welcome to Sandro's Success Stream.
My friend, thank you so much for having me.
Well, a busy man like you, I'm just honored that you've found half an hour in your busy schedule. I'm going to start by saying to you, it's just frankly greedy, Simon, that you've written 11 books. I mean, where on earth do you find the time? I'm just about struggling to the end of my second, but you've written 11 books, 54 countries. You've spoken in 2,500 organizations. You've inspired and motivated and made more productive. So let's start in the obvious place. Where did this all begin for Simon T. Bailey? And where did this propensity for standing on a stage in front of tens of thousands of people come from?
Well, I think first of all, Disney sent me to Paris a number of years ago, and while I was in Paris, I'm teaching Lion King lessons, and I'm just blah blah blah. It was for 1,000 leaders out of Barclays Bank out of London, and what I realized, I had a moment where everything just became silent in the room and I was in the zone. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So after finishing there in Paris, came back to Orlando, Florida, where I live, and Disney promoted me to a leadership role for the Disney Institute. Great organization, had a great time, but I hit a moment where I said, I want to go back to Paris. I want to do that. And so I asked myself three questions. What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do if no one paid me to do it? What makes me come alive? And when I answered those questions, I said, I want to speak, write, train, consult, and coach. That's what I'll do for the rest of my life.
Wow. What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Can we just talk about that for a moment? Because, I've heard, Simon, of the SMART goal principle. And the thing I always have a bit of a hang up on is the realistic bit, because, I've always learned that, people fail in life not because they aim too high and miss, right? But most people fail because they aim too low and hit. Um, so, are you purporting here that people are capable of greater things, that it's okay to set unrealistic goals? Because, let's take Disney as an example, ever striving for greater greatness. And I know that's been a great inspiration for you personally, and in terms of all the things you do now with organizations and audiences around the world. Just talk us around the whole ethos of performance, of brilliance. That's your trademark, right? So what essentially makes someone brilliant, taking into account all those factors?
We did a recent study and we asked people how do they define brilliance? And the research came back and said confidence, creativity, and intelligence. So when an individual is doing something that is natural to them, it increases their confidence to show up and to pursue success even more. They tap into creativity and they practice AI, actual intelligence. So, in other words, they tap into what makes them come alive. And when you decide, this is what I'm going to do, you find your swim lane and you stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Because when you compare yourself to everyone else, you have the inferiority complex of, oh my goodness, I should be further ahead. No, you're right where you're supposed to be right now. Keep moving forward.
I think back to the thing that we all did, because I'm going to ask you this question now: nature, nurture. There's lots of people that we meet, and we're going to get inundated with emails and messages on social media when people have the opportunity to reflect on what we've talked about today. A lot of people will say, Simon, yeah, but Simon's just he's kind of got it. He knows what to do, he knows how to do it. I'm not that kind of person. Do you believe fundamentally that we all start in the same place? Do we all have what it takes to be brilliant in life, business?
We all have what it takes. We all have the same 24 hours, as we often teach and we know. It's a daily choice as to what do I want and what environment am I putting myself in to blossom and grow. Environment has everything to do with your growth and development.
And in terms of the audiences that you address all around the world, do you find? You do a lot of research. I know that you study your subject in great detail, and that's another thing that I think sets you apart because where you go, and I've had the pleasure of being sat in an audience listening to you on numerous occasions, Simon. But what is the biggest objective in your experience? I know this demands a very generalized answer, but what's the biggest objection, the biggest frustration that you see people having in life and business? And what are some of the things that we can think about doing in order to make some progress, to take that continuous action, albeit baby steps?
So the research says, according to Gallup, they've surveyed 190 countries. Roughly 7 out of 10 people are dealing with stress, anxiety, borderline depression. 7 out of 10. So that means on Monday morning, when the alarm clock goes off, people are in a job, a career, or calling. Now, let me unpack that. If you're in a job and you do not like the job, it frustrates the heck out of you. It's the fingernails on the chalkboard. Then you go to a job because you're employed. When you go to a career, you're getting the skills to say, how do I stay relevant for where the economy is going? But when you tap into a calling, you don't chase money, money chases you because you are showing up every single day to solve a problem. And it's in that success as you solve a problem that you are releasing a neural pathway to say, I matter, I add value, because a job stands for just overboard. And when a person is just overboard, they work hard enough to keep a job and do just enough to keep from getting fired. But for those who find a calling, all of a sudden they light up. Everybody that steps into their quantum field pulls off of their energy because it's not about what they're getting, it's about what they're giving.
Wow. I always pause after I listen to you speak because I'm almost in awe, and I've concluded that when I grow up, I want to be just like you, Simon. We go back a fair old way. We know each other through NSA and MDRT and various other platforms that you've graced. So tell us, if you would, then about the 11 books. I'm not asking you to give us chapter and verse on every single one. But essentially, what's the theme? I've read, I think, 6 of yours. I don't think I've got to all 11 yet, but I'm working on it. So the books, and let's also talk about the courses as well, because a lot of people would identify you as a keynoter, but there is so much more to what you do. So let's just talk about the books, and especially very keen today to find out about the courses and why you run them.
The benefit for readers who read my book, the theme that runs through everything is the best hand that will feed you in any economy is the one at the end of your wrist. That's the central theme. It is about brilliance. There is no one coming to save you. You have to get up off your blessed assurance and make it happen. I share failure in the book because in the dictionary, failure comes before success. And so I talk about what I learned from failure because I think you learn more from people's mistakes and how they overcame them. But then the third thing is I give you practical tools that invite you to opt in, to enlist in, to say, here's what I'm going to do for myself. So, what I've realized, even in my latest book, one of the failures in time past is I've been this person, do this, do that. And that's great. But now you are a wise person. You know your data. So I invite you into a conversation with yourself and I give you questions because questions, you have to immerse yourself on a quest to discover your next chapter. So I just come along as the guide, as the whisperer, to invite you into a conversation to break through and tap into your brilliance.
What, Simon, what stops people from discovering their brilliance? I often say to the audiences that I address, and I'm by no means as accomplished a speaker or coach as you, but I know that if I stand in a room, let's say of 1,000 people, probably 500 of them will do absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter whether you give them something on a plate and you say, this is not going to fail you, just do this and you will reach a better outcome. The reality is that human nature being what it is, 500 of those 1,000 will just do nothing. Maybe that's just a reflection of me. I'm not sure. Maybe 999 would do it if it was you. But we do know that it doesn't matter whether you give people the tools and the techniques and the skill set to achieve greater outcomes. The fact of the matter is, a large percentage, unfortunately, will still do nothing. What is it that leads to apathy? Why is it that so many people doubt whether or not they can achieve brilliance? And what can we do as a community, as individuals, to try and rid ourselves of that natural tendency to want to stay in the same place because it's more comfortable?
So years ago, I was attending a session, and the facilitator said something that I swear by to this day, and it's the answer. You don't decide the future, you decide your habits, and your habits decide your future. The secret to sustainable success is hidden in the daily routine. So the reason most people don't start is because they don't want to change their habits. It's so basic and almost oversimplified. So if there's someone saying, "Okay, Simon, what can I practically do?" Okay. What is one thing that you can stop doing and start doing today? Like one step, make the phone call, make the extra call, send the email, send the text. Just one step. The fortune is in the follow up. And then what's the next step that you can take? So plan it out, just one micro step. Because I was listening to John Maxwell and he said something really powerful. He said, consistency compounds over time. So the habit of just being consistent, it builds confidence, it builds an outcome, and then you start to get some results. You're like, whoa, it all started with one little step every single day in the same direction.
Consistency and compounds over time. I love that. And John Maxwell is as incredible an author as you are. Just taking one step back to the courses. Uh, Again, that's something that's kind of developed over time.
Mhm.
Tell us about the courses. Typically, large organizations, and there are some very well-known organizations that have brought you in to work with them. And by all means mention them if you wish, but what are you being asked to do as a facilitator of this desire to grow as organizations and individually as well? Just run us through the outline of the courses that you would typically put together for companies.
So, one of the main courses is how do you grow relationships as a manager? What I've discovered is people get promoted into a role because of tenure, not just because they have the emotional intelligence to have the role. So, how do we help managers really grow long term so that they can help their teams grow? The second thing is how do you build relationships once you're inside the company? What I've discovered over the years, individuals can have the technical ability to get the job and or even to start the business, but everything is done with relationships. So LinkedIn Learning invited me to come and create some courses for them. So one is growing relationships as a manager, building business relationships as a manager. Those courses have been viewed by 400,000 professionals in 100 countries. The other course that I'm really focusing on is resilience at work. How do you coach your team into a thriving future? Because what I'm recognizing with managers, your responsibility is not to retain individuals. And I know this is counterintuitive. Hear me out. Your responsibility is to release people into their destiny while they're working for you, while they're collaborating with you. So when people come alongside and work with you, your responsibility is to unlock what's important to them so they discover the leader within themselves while they're following you. So you can never take a person to a place that you've not been yourself. So in our courses, I really unpack how do you get there? What does it look like?
And the other thing I'm slightly envious of, I was almost about to use the word jealousy, but that's yeah, it actually might be that. How on earth do you get 91 million views on your viral video? Tell us a little bit about that. We'll see if we can get you to 100 million.
Oh my goodness. It's a story of my daughter came into my home office and she asked me how I was doing. And I said she wanted to talk, but I was emotionally unavailable. So she sat down, she said, "Hey, Daddy." I say, "What's going on?" And we really didn't talk. She said, "Dad, I see you're busy. I'll just come back later." And she leaves my office and it hit me on the plane that I missed a moment to connect with my daughter. So when I came back from out of town, I said, "Madison, you want to talk to me?" She said, "Dad, it's okay." I said, "No, it's not okay. Because if I don't change my behavior, you're going to marry a joker just like me." And her mother said to me after 25 years of being married, "You give everybody the best of you, but you give us the rest of you. And I don't want the leftovers anymore." And what I realized, Sandro, in that moment, I built a house but lost a home. I was chasing money but had no meaning. And I was pursuing power but had no purpose. I shared the stage with the late, great Stephen Covey years ago. And he said, sometimes as you're climbing the ladder of perceived success, your ladder could be against the wrong wall. And when he said it, it just hit me. My ladder was against the wrong wall. So the 90 million, 91 million views, no organic boosting, that was all just because I told the truth of where I failed.
Wow, that's a very interesting one. And if we could end the live stream right there, it would still be 15 very impactful minutes. That very poignant what you said about family and being emotionally involved and engaged. You are a very successful man. You travel, all around the world. You're on the road a lot of days of the year. Um, how does Simon Bailey manage, the conundrum that is the need and desire to work, to grow a business, to look after one's family? And kudos to you. 25 years married is a feat in and of itself, especially in the modern world. And harnessing the those really amazing uh, in the moment opportunities with one's family that ultimately leads to you not, as many people do, having regret later in life. How do you get that balance right? If balance is even a thing, because I've heard some people say, well, in order, I think about Tim Grover. He talks about, if you're successful in one area, you're probably lacking in another, so there is no such thing as balance. Do you have any thoughts or philosophies on balance in life, Simon?
Yeah, well, in the spirit of full disclosure, a lot, and some people know, a lot of people don't. I actually went through a divorce after those 25 years because I didn't get it right. And so, what I've learned after going through therapy and therapists really giving me some coping strategies is I had to flip the script. I had to put family first and the business second, with the understanding that I would become better for the business when I had a healthy relationship with the women in my life. My therapist shared with me that there's a lot of research globally out about fathers and daughters, but emerging research out about mothers and sons. And she said, "You've got some mama issues." So I began to deal with my mama issues and then the mother of my children. And I've since gotten remarried, married to an amazing woman. And also, my daughter and I have kind of come full circle. So, if anything, I would offer up to individuals that are listening to us is come from a place of forgiveness. How do you really forgive what has happened? Number one, that's what I did. Number two, come from a place of emotional honesty. When you become a parent, there is no parenting book that you get when your child is born. You are making it up. And one of my failures, I have been a helicopter dad. So I'm always hovering and swooping in and telling my two children, do this, do that. And what I realized, they've got to live their own life. And I had to enter into a conversation with them as to how can I best support you and where you're going, because what 22 was for me looks different for you at 22 and 25. And I think the final thing is take time to reflect. I learned this from one of my mentors, and he said, Simon, every night before my head hits the pillow, reflect on the day. What did I learn today? How did I grow today? How will I make a difference tomorrow? And I believe if we just start there, we'll find what I call integration, not necessarily balance, but integration and keeping everything moving forward.
I'm going to be, I don't know if provocative is the right word now for a second, Simon, but um, please take this in the manner in which it's intended. So, I introduce you today as the world's leading authority on brilliance, and you are. You are very much on a number of speakers' pedestal. All those people I know at NSA and around the world, they do hold you in very, very high esteem, and we see you as this iconic speaker that transforms lives, that helps people to find their own inner brilliance. And yet you very openly and honestly talked about the failure of your marriage, and albeit that we have a happy ending there, which is great, but you talk about your therapist, and you talk about a mentor as well. So one thing that I think a lot of people listening to this today will be struggling with in a positive way is, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that somebody that could be so successful has all of this other stuff going on in their life, that they have to deal with as a sort of a sidebar. Um, what what advice, what comments, what observations would you make for all those listening from around the world, where they kind of go, well, successful people don't have any challenges. They just, it all comes naturally and everything's perfect. And but clearly in your own world, that's not your experience. Is it your experience with other successful people? Do we all have stuff going on? Because I think a lot of people seek the reassurance of knowing they're not alone when it comes to, life's battles and challenges.
My friend, we all have stuff going on. And when we honor our journey, we move from a human doing to a human being. It is natural as a human being to have stuff happen. That is life in and of itself. And for so long, I would bury my head in the sand as I was chasing success, only to discover that I needed to shift to significant success. And significant success where it's not about me, it's about honoring the human beings around me and starting with the question, how are you? And when people share how they're doing, it opens me up to share how I'm doing. Now, not cry me a river, don't cry for me, Argentina. No, 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 no. It's just having this human moment to say we're on the planet right now. And the more honest we are with others, we're honest with ourselves.
I think I'm right in saying you feature in Success Magazine's top 25, alongside Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey. So I have to say everything we're talking about today, in terms of what you've achieved, that's measured, not just by us and people who've listened to you speak, but by some of the world's best and most well-known publications. Um, you do a lot of, as I mentioned before, you do a lot of research. I'd like to talk just momentarily about the State of Working America report, because again, you have this very successful speaking business. Why would you want to go off and do stuff like this? Because it's very detailed. It takes a lot of time, but some very fascinating insights emerged from that. Just tell us about that research, why you did it, and what you found.
We did the research because I wanted to add some grounding to what I was sharing. Because at best, I've been a thought leader with an opinion instead of research to truly back it up. So, some of the findings, we put together 27 customized questions, just trying to understand brilliance and resilience. And here's the thumbnail big idea. In business, winds of change and being in business is like living and riding a surfboard in the ocean. You're knocked off your surfboard with change and uncertainty, but it's your resilience that gets you back on the surfboard, and it's your brilliance that allows you to catch the next wave. So, what we found out is 55% of working Americans would take a lower payer job to work for someone who inspired their brilliance. 74% of working Americans would prefer to work for a manager with no formal education than for a manager with advanced degrees. 80% of working Americans said that resilience should be modeled by managers and executives at work. So when I looked at that, what that really kind of spoke to me is like, oh my goodness, now I've got the proof, the evidence that I can say, okay, here's what this is. This is not just my opinion. Here's what people are saying. I've just finished writing an article for a magazine that's read all over the world, 6,500 organizations around the world. And they were asking me, they were saying, hey, Simon, so leadership, like, why is leadership so important and what does it have to do with your research? Here's what I realized in every organization, you have leaders at the top of the food chain, you have frontline, but it's the mess in the middle that managers have got to figure out. How do we create a culture where people want to show up every single day and be
Mm.
their very best selves? Because if I can show up in an environment where I'm activated rather than tolerated, you don't have to tell me to be brilliant. I will be brilliant automatically because I'm seen, valued, and understood.
It's like we keep reverting back to this word brilliant because that's your kind of your trademark, right? But it is brilliant because everything that you say, it's almost like, and I want to make everyone aware that is listening from around the world today, there is no rehearsal when it comes to these live streams. We literally just throw ourselves in the deep end. We pretend it's two guys in a bar having a drink, talking informally, and it's wherever you go, I follow, and vice versa. So this is not being rehearsed. This is straight from everything Simon believes in, and I think that's what makes you so authentic and honest and brilliant in your own way. And on the subject of brilliant, let's talk about brilliant coaching, because if everything else that you've already talked about isn't enough, Simon, you've also got brilliant coaching. Tell us about that and what you do with organizations and the impact, the results that you seek to achieve.
We realize with emerging leaders in many organizations around the world, they need a coach to come alongside and allow them to process where they are in their journey. Sometimes you need to talk to somebody outside the organization, outside the business, just to get a different perspective. So, Brilliant Coaching really exists to do that. So, they've taken a lot of the proprietary content that I've created, and the brilliant coaches, they go and they work with the individuals to be their most brilliant self. So, we work through a model that's around the brilliance DNA. And it's about personal brilliance, which leads to leadership brilliance, which leads to team brilliance, which leads to organizational brilliance. And notice the organization is at the bottom because you have to start with who you are as a person first. So the brilliant coach helps you be the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror to say, where am I in my journey and how do I show up so that I can lead effectively?
And in terms of I know what's coming next. We are going to get swamped with requests for that was an amazing conversation you had with Simon. I want to find out more about him, which of course we'll do by sharing lots and lots of links. And sorry to put you on the spot here a little bit, Simon, but on the basis you've coped so expertly with every other question I've thrown at you, um, someone comes up to you and says, right, I get it. I'm prepared to buy into the fact that I am brilliant in my own way. I need to kind of find out how that works and what I need to do to achieve some of the outcomes I seek to achieve. And I've heard of failure and learning, and I've heard of brilliance and outcomes and achieving of one's objectives. If there were, let's say, three things, somebody came up to you and said, right, what are your top three mantras, rules to live by, the three things that you've learned in your life that kind of transcend all others? Um, and I give you permission to think about these if you want to, but what would you say were those three things? Because everything we've talked about today, we've unpacked an awful lot in a very short space of time, and I apologize to those people listening that we've just touched the surface on so many different subject matters. But if there were Simon T. Bailey's three rules to live by, Um, if they attend your coaching, great. If they read a book, fantastic. If they go online and absorb all your collateral, fantastic as well. But just as a takeaway for now, what would be the three things if there were three things?
Number one, answer the question, what do you want for you? The power of that question is to understand what you wants you. So what do you want for you? Not what anybody else wants. What do you want for you? Number one. Number two, a paycheck is given to people who show up. Opportunities are given to individuals who think and work beyond what they're paid to do. When you add extra value, that becomes the thing that separates you from everyone else. And then the third thing, and this was something I believe in, I will say it until I go to my grave. And this is something I learned from Disney. How do you plus up the experience? And so here's the quick example. In the movie Lion King, Rafiki holds up Simba and Simba sneezes. 99% of the movie going audience would have never noticed the sneeze. When the CEO of Disney is asked the question, why would you put a sneeze in there? And he would say, we did it for the 1%. The 1% who saw that we went above and beyond the call of duty. So, what's the net takeaway? Customer service is a department, but customer love is a mindset. So, how do you plus it up and bring love to everything you do so people will say, what? You gave a little something extra without expecting anything. That is the point of differentiation right there.
Well, you absolutely plus it up, my friend. The reason I wanted you back, you were a fantastic guest on the podcast. The most watched podcast of all of the ones on Apple and Spotify. I bet you didn't know that, but I don't think I've shared it with you before. And the reason we wanted you back is for all of the reasons that you've just shared in the last 30 plus minutes. So thank you so much for giving up your time, sharing your wisdom and insights in what makes us all truly brilliant, whether we've found that place in life or whether we haven't. I look forward to finishing off the rest of the books. If there was one book, Simon, because there's people out there now going, right, I need to read the books, but I need to start somewhere. Which one should they start with?
They should start with resilience at work, how to coach yourself into a thriving future.
Yeah, I love that one, actually. I'll endorse that one. Amen. Simon T. Bailey, thank you so much. God love you. You're one special human being. And like I said right at the beginning, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. So you have to coach me as to how I find that brilliance that you have in abundance. It's been a pleasure, my friend. Great to see you again, and look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
For sure.